that it will determine whether or not the former president of the United States can be granted full immunity or not for his actions at the end of his presidency. Mark your calendars. The week of April 22nd, Trump goes before the high court. Come on in. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, hanging out with us today, Chris Steyerwalt, NewsNation political editor and host, by the way, don't you know, of The Hill Sunday. That premieres this weekend. Tiffany Smiley is the former Republican Senate candidate in the state of Washington. Scott Bolden, NewsNation political contributor and former D.C. Democratic Party chairman. Julia Manchester, of course, national political reporter for The Hill. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. The 24 hours that we've been experiencing here that we're in the middle of, you have the top Republican in the Senate say, I'm out.
Right.
I'm letting you know when I'm stepping down as the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate. Check. You've got Donald Trump, Joe Biden going to the southern border tomorrow. Check. We'll get into all that stuff later. That's not even the biggest story, because now we know Donald Trump versus the United States headed to the Supreme Court next month, the immunity case, Chris.
Yeah, and, you know, the Supreme Court is, unfortunately, in our elections now, we have a lot more litigation than voting going on. And this has always been an unfortunate truth of elections in America, in which after the fact, everybody sues everybody. We're going to do this, and you keep the polls open or whatever. And it was sort of, we brushed it off. I once very famously referred to such litigation as lawsuits, schmawsuits. And I got in trouble for that. But that's sort of the way to think about it. But now you have so much of what's going on. And whether it's Hunter Biden, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's whatever, that the court system has become the first part instead of the last part of elections.
So as a reset, the D.C. Court of Appeals ruled earlier this month that Donald Trump does not have immunity for his actions at the end of his presidency. Trump then asked the full appeals court to weigh in. What the Supreme Court does today essentially puts all of that on hold. It's a win, Scott Bolden, in the interim for President Trump, does it not? Because it just kind of delays all of this. And by the way, Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor, come on in. I want to hear your thoughts on this. But a short-term win for Trump here?
Short term, but very short. I'm really surprised, and I'd be interested in what Jesse has to say, but I am surprised, given the lower court's decision and the D.C. Circuit's decisions that were so blistering against Donald Trump, that the Supreme Court even took this case and kind of should have rejected it with a one-liner. The Colorado case is the one we're
You think they should have rejected this?
They rejected the appeal, not gotten into the political decision-making of Donald Trump and his immunity, because the case against him and the arguments against him are just so incredibly strong. They must have some questions in order to do an oral argument. They must have some questions they want answered. I can't fathom what they have, though.
Jesse, what's going on here?
Yep, so here's the deal. Typically, in a normal case, as Scott would say, if there was a disagreement over the lower courts about what the issue is, one court voting in favor of Trump, one court saying no to Trump, you would have the Supreme Court to try to resolve the issue. The fact that all the lower courts said, you know, he's not immune, they want to take it up. I think there is a discrete issue they want to listen to. I think, first of all, they want their stamp on an issue of whether or not the president is immune from prosecution. But even more than that, the specific issue about was he engaging in official acts, not the argument that he has to first be impeached and convicted to be tried. I think that is ridiculous. The idea of was he acting in his official capacity? Does he have a right to oversee the election? Does he have a right to oversee the certification of votes? I think that specific issue is something that is going to be debated among the justices. Could be wrong. Okay. They're going to hear all the arguments, but that's what I think they want to test out.
And I don't want to be cynical. I want to be skeptical, not cynical. But I will say this. If you are John Roberts, you would like an opportunity for the court to give Trump a gift, which they probably are, which you can see coming on ballot access.
That's the Colorado case, a separate case.
To be able to say, look, the Supreme Court is saying Donald Trump in a clear voice that Donald Trump gets to be on the presidential ballot, and then you can turn the page and shoot him out of a cannon and say you absolutely don't have absolute immunity.
I want both of your thoughts here in a second, but if you've watched the show long enough and I bring the computer in front, it's because there's news. Donald Trump just commented on this Truth Social post, quote, legal scholars from Donald Trump. Legal scholars are extremely thankful for the Supreme Court's decision today to take up presidential immunity. Without presidential immunity, a president will not be able to properly function or make decisions in the best interest on the United States of America. Presidents will always be concerned and even paralyzed by the prospect of wrongful prosecution and retaliation after they leave office. This, Donald Trump says, could actually lead to the extortion and blackmail of a president. The other side would say, if you don't do something just the way we want it, we are going to go after you when you leave office, or perhaps even sooner, Tiffany.
Yeah, and he's right. I mean, this is problematic. How are we living now in a time where a presidential candidate could potentially be kicked off of a ballot and not on a ballot? I also want to address the American people here, because these endless trials and hearings are exhausting for the American people. This is the time that we're not spending addressing the issues that they're facing. High inflation, a border crisis.
Yeah, but Tiffany, if I may.
Republicans have an opportunity here to hold Joe Biden accountable, and I think this is all distraction, and it doesn't move our country forward in a good way.
What about, real quick, Julia, this idea, this line sticks out to me from Trump, this could actually lead to the extortion and blackmail of a president.
Like he's thought about it.
That's a new one as he shifts into general mode.
It's a new line, and it's a new line I think he's going to use against critics, knowing that this is going to come up on the campaign trail. But, to piggyback off of something Tiffany said, it's amazing that the American people are watching this play out, while at the same time seeing Donald Trump's very likely opponent, former President Biden's son, on Capitol Hill today.
Oh, we're getting to that, I promise you.
And that, it seems like the American people are going to be looking at these two candidates, one who is facing legal issues himself, the other whose son is facing legal issues on top of this impeachment inquiry into his father. I got to wonder how much all of this, Republican and Democratic, both sides, is really sinking in.
Okay, so Jesse, doesn't stop here for Trump. Turning now to the civil fraud case in New York, an appeals judge has rejected the temporary pause in enforcement of the multi-million-dollar penalties. For now, Trump can apply for loans, though it appears as if his attorneys are saying maybe he only has $100 million at this point in time liquid to put up. What's going on?
Yeah, because he would have to put up a bond, a certain amount of that judgment. And look, there became a question, where would he get the money? I mean, at one point we're talking maybe he had $400 million in cash. And there also becomes a question, do liens have to be put on his property in order to pay this off? Look, it's a conversation about what happens now. And he's going to obviously appeal it. He's going to try to delay the ruling any which way he can. I don't think his main concern is trying to pay the money off right now. It becomes a question, can he make a legal argument to overturn what happened? That's going to maybe be more difficult for him, because Judge Engoron was very adamant in his ruling and findings.
Okay. All right. So that's two of Trump's many cases. Julia was talking about Hunter Biden. He was back up on Capitol Hill today. A little while ago, he wrapped up 6 hours of testifying behind closed doors before the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees, pursuing an impeachment inquiry against his father. This is now shifting to President Biden and what's before him. Hunter Biden denies that the president was involved in any of his personal business.
It seems to me that the Republican members wanted to spend more time talking about my client's addiction than they could ask any question that had anything to do with what they call their impeachment inquiry. There is no evidence because there is no evidence, and today only confirmed that.
Hunter Biden standing there in the background. Abby Lowell, his attorney.
Looking very cool and comfortable. Hunter was back there. Just chill.
What do you think the decision is to make... Hunter didn't talk today. No. He talked last time. He left it to Abby Lowell today. Why?
I guess he smartened up. The last time, and we talked about it here, what an appallingly selfish thing that Hunter Biden did the last time. He went and trolled the committee and sat in the front row and then went out on the steps with, what's his name from California, Eric Swalwell, and just the kind of showboat idiocy that could only hurt his father, that only hurts his father's position. This time, he did the correct thing. He went and did the interview. He took his beating, and then he went outside and let his lawyer speak for him instead of speaking for him.
Well, I don't think he took a beating, quite frankly. This has been a win-win for Hunter Biden. And that showmanship that you talked about and criticized.
Oh, no,
let me tell you something.
Is that showmanship?
That white-collar criminal defense lawyer.
Oh, Abby, you're talking about.
Love that, right? Okay. And it was a political statement, and it was all politics because Abby Lowell knew that the subpoena that he was given was either insufficient or was not consistent with the rules of the committee. Now, that being said, Hunter Biden, when they gave him a new subpoena, he agreed to go sit, and he sat. But here's the problem. You can never get away from this problem. There's not one witness, no cases, what prosecutors say. There's not one witness, reliable witness, credible witness that connects the president to Hunter Biden. And I love the line. Hunter Biden's not in the White House. He didn't get $2 billion like Kushner did. And so why are they trying to make him the linchpin for impeaching his father?
He tried to bring up Jared Kushner today, too, by the way. We were talking about it with Elizabeth Vargas in the lead into the show. Well, that's what Democrats are starting to do now.
Yeah, we're going to bring it up more and more.
I wonder where it goes.
Yeah, look, we need transparency and accountability
Fair
on this
enough.
case. And, Joe Biden's been in office since before I was born. So this family has benefited windfall off of this country.
And, it's a rebuttable presumption. It's a rebuttable presumption.
Okay, but we deserve to know the facts. And I think of independent journalism in this country. Catherine Herridge, who I think is an incredible, amazing journalist. I don't know if this is true or not, but I believe that she was digging in and investigating this.
Name me one witness or one document that connects Hunter Biden and the president to any bad acts, criminal acts, immoral acts.
Using his father's name and status to benefit.
It's not illegal to invoke your father's name.
It's certainly not a good look. It's not a good look.
Okay.
Jesse,
you can't go to jail over
this is part of the back and forth, right, that we've heard from quite some time. But I sat, as I saw, Jesse, Abby Lowell up front and Hunter Biden not talking, standing behind him, 2 days after he gives this exclusive interview to Axios, basically saying, you know what, I got to stay sober for lots of reasons, but including for my father's campaign. What'd you make of him there, deciding not to talk today and leave it up to the attorney?
I've always felt that every time he made a public statement, for a guy who's trying to show that he's not politically connected to his father, it made it more political. And he has a number of legal issues that are pending. He doesn't want to say anything that's going to jeopardize that. And after what is conceivably a win today, I'd like to see the transcripts, but after what is conceivably a win in this whole impeachment process, there was nothing he needed to say. It was already a win. Remember, there's nothing. The House Republicans have all of the evidence. They have bank records. They have statements. They have two associates that have contradicted and said that there's been no connection between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's businesses. So there's nothing more that he had to say at that point.
All right. Do you have any blistering takes or thoughts on President Biden's health exam today, or you want to leave it to the panel?
I mean, I don't know. Is ice cream the best thing? At that age, you want to be careful of it. But listen, if that's you're going to have some ice cream, make a big statement about the Middle East. Why not? No, I'm crazy.
We'll leave it there. Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. Jesse, thank you. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon. President Biden, as I mentioned, received his annual physical today with his doctor reporting, quote, no new concerns. He continues to be fit for duty, end quote. However, notably absent from that report, by the way, they put out a letter. The president's doctor put out a letter. They do this basically every year. Last year was a 5-page letter. This year was a 6-page letter.
Nice.
So it's pretty thorough. Notably absent, though, a cognitive test. And here's what the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, said today when she was asked, why no test?
The president doesn't need a cognitive test. That is not my assessment. That is not my assessment. That is the assessment of the president's doctor. That is also the assessment of the neurologist. The president's doctor has said, if you look at what this president, the president who is also the commander-in-chief, he passes a cognitive test every day. Every day.
Julia, in that room, having been there a ton, you have as well. There's questions that intrigue the room that don't intrigue others. But that question of why not a cognitive test and then the response that she gave, he basically does the job every single day.
And look, you have voters who are concerned about his cognitive ability, his
that's my
age,
point. It's everywhere.
And also Donald Trump's age and his cognitive ability. It's interesting because you've heard Nikki Haley and some other Republicans call on Joe Biden to take a cognitive test, get it out of the way, to call on other elected officials that are older to take a cognitive test. I don't know if Joe Biden going ahead and taking that test would necessarily put that to bed. We'll see. But, one thing that's notable to me is that you had his physical come out today, but you also had Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell step down.
Oh, yeah.
Mitch McConnell is also in his 80s.
Yep.
He's faced a lot of scrutiny over his physical cognitive abilities getting older. Interesting contrast.
So when we saw Mitch McConnell today, one of the more fascinating moments of that, I mean, there's a lot going on, but when he stepped aside and the first three people to shake his hand were John Thune, the number 2 Republican in the Senate, 63 years old.
Yep.
Susan Collins, moderate Republican from Maine, 71 years old. Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, 73 years old. Just
Thune,
a little.
Thune is basically a teenager.
Yes, he was a spring chicken in the room
at
63.
And I just very quickly want to give Joe Biden one piece of advice. He needs to find Donald Trump's old doctors so that he can get those health reports. That's what he needs. He's 7 feet tall. He weighs 185 pounds. He's in the greatest health of all time. I watched him pick up a car over his head. We're
going to talk more about this later. Meantime, coming up here on The Hill, did you hear what the New York City Mayor Eric Adams is now saying, what he is now saying about sanctuary cities? Changing his tune a bit, and we are going to get reaction from a lawmaker from the state of Texas. Coming up here on the other side of the break, Congressman Henry Cuellar in advance of the border visit from President Biden and President Trump tomorrow. And as we talked about, Mitch McConnell, Senator Ron Johnson joins us. I asked the senator, is this the grand old party or the party of Trump? We'll talk about it when The Hill returns. Did you see this? The New York mayor, Eric Adams, has done a 180 with regard to part of the controversial issues involving sanctuary cities. He says cities should be able to deport migrants who are suspected, not necessarily convicted, of serious crimes. Joining us now is the Texas Democratic Congressman Henry Cuellar, whose district runs along the southern border. And of course, as we know, Congressman, President Biden and Donald Trump are heading to the southern border tomorrow. Thanks for being back here on The Hill. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yep. I wonder what the White House or what the president, if anything, has told you in advance of this trip. Congressman, your district is basically in the middle of where these two are going, just north of where President Biden will be visiting. What can we expect from him? What have they told you?
Well, I've been talking to the White House for a while, saying that it's very important for President Biden to show up at the border. As you know, last time he was in El Paso, and now he's at the end of the Rio Grande, which is Brownsville. And I'm glad that he's showing up there to talk, to law enforcement, to Border Patrol, and to community leaders. I was just hearing y'all about the New York mayor saying wanted to make changes at the sanctuary city. I can tell you that along the border, there's not a single sanctuary city, because we know the burden it is to have people come across the river and the impact that it has.
So the White House, Congressman, is now telling us the following, and here's a statement from a White House spokesperson, quote, when a local jurisdiction has information about an individual who could pose a threat to public safety, we want them to share that information with ICE. That from the White House. Let me ask you, Congressman, does President Biden need to go further, in your opinion? Look at the American people, talk to the American people, and say sanctuary cities need to end, full stop.
In my opinion, he ought to go to the border. He needs to say, this is what we're facing right now. And if there's any sanctuary cities, those sanctuary cities should be able to provide any information to ICE. Imagine having a situation where ICE cannot get information. It's like those people that attacked the policemen. They couldn't share that information. They ended up somewhere in Arizona until they were busted over there. So, again, they have to share information with ICE.
But should we hear from the president on this front? Because it's one thing to put out a White House statement and say, you know what, we believe in this not little, but we believe in this specific change in policy. Should the president come out and say that this needs to end?
Well, you know, the president needs to make that decision. But if I would be advising him, I would say definitely yes. Look at the people straight in the eye and say, look, we need to address the issue of migration. And if there are anybody that have violated the law, they should be turned over to ICE. He ought to look at the people straight in the eye and say, this is what we need to do.
Congressman Cuellar, one last for you. The president's going to Brownsville. If you look at illegal immigration encounters, over the last few days, it's a few dozen. It's more than 1,200 in Eagle Pass, Texas, where Donald Trump is going. Illegal immigration encounters in the Del Rio sector, December and January, 87,000. Rio Grande Valley, 25,000. Is the president missing the mark by going to Brownsville and not going where Donald Trump is going?
No, look, you have to look at the whole border. He was in El Paso. I was with him a little bit over a year ago. He's now in Brownsville. That area used to be one of the high places where people used to come. But as you know, they changed. It was the Valley, then it was Eagle Pass, Del Rio, then it was El Paso. What's the high point right now? Tucson, Arizona. So as you know, the criminal organizations are able to weave and send migrants. So it might have been a hot spot. It has changed now. So I'm glad that he's going down to the border. It's good for him.
Congressman Cuellar, appreciate the time here on the Hill, as always. Thank you, sir. I know we'll have you on back soon.
Thank you so much. Okay,
Chris, so what's at stake for Biden and Trump tomorrow?
Can I just be grumpus just briefly and say partisanship? I really appreciate Congressman Cuellar because he is able to have more frank conversations than a lot of people.
He's frank and he's serious.
Yes, and I also love the way that he pronounces Spanish language place names. It delights me. But here's how partisanship makes us stupid. So if we imagine, if politicians right now, Donald Trump is telling Republicans, once we win, then we'll resolve the problem at the border. When Democrats were running, when Joe Biden was running against Donald Trump, they said, once we win, we'll solve the problem at the border. This is not a problem that gets solved. It gets mediated. It gets remediated. It's complicated. It's hard. It lasts forever. We're dealing with a global issue where the poor global South is trying to move into the wealthy global North. That's not going away. That's not going to change. And if we keep lying, if candidates and parties keep lying about simple solutions, we will never have the courage and ability to have complex answers to hard questions.
Okay. I heard they're giving you a Sunday show to talk about stuff like this.
Harumph!
Okay. Still much more ahead here on the Hill, including this was the lead story today until it wasn't. My goodness, we found out from the Supreme Court. Mitch McConnell, his decision to retire from Congress in a couple years' time, but really step down as the top Republican. What does this mean? Why did Mitch McConnell decide to do it now? I talk with Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, after the break here on the Hill on NewsNation returns. All right, welcome back here to the Hill. So Mitch McConnell, Senate Minority Leader, announcing today that this will be his last year as the top Republican in the Senate. McConnell citing two factors: his age, 82.
Father Time remains undefeated. I'm no longer the young man sitting in the back, hoping colleagues would remember my name. It's time for the next generation of leadership.
McConnell also gave a nod to the current dynamic among Republicans, here in Washington.
Believe me, I know the politics within my party at this particular moment in time. I have many faults. Misunderstanding politics is not one of them. I believe more strongly than ever that America's global leadership is essential.
All right, Tiffany. So he said he's 82, and you recognize he's getting older. He also gives a nod to that the GOP, he didn't say this, might be the party of Trump. And is that why he is out?
I don't think so, no. You know, the Republican Party owes Mitch McConnell actually a debt of gratitude. They probably don't want to hear this, but he was instrumental in securing, you know, the majority of conservative judges.
Trump trashed him.
It doesn't matter. McConnell's done good things for our party, and I deeply respect him. You know, I think it's a smart decision to step down. The average age in America is 38, so it is time for new leadership.
Is that really the average age in this country? Huh. Learn something new every day.
So it's time for new
almost 30
leadership.
Years over the average age in the U.S.
I mean, I respect his decision, and I think, you know, Mitch McConnell is good in the Senate. He's good for our party, and going forward, you know, we are conservatives at the end of the day that want the best for the American people. And as long as Trump continues to talk about the issues that are deeply affecting American people, he will win. I mean, you can look at the numbers. You can look at Biden's numbers. They're not great.
We'll see in about 8 months. But here's the deal. McConnell owes the Democrats at least one Supreme Court justice. Third one. And he's a wily figure. He's a wily figure. The health issue, freezing in front of the camera, we talked about that.
We've all seen it, so he can't escape it.
It's a real health issue. Right. I saw that with my father. I've shared that with you all. And I think it's a health issue. He's had his sister-in-law passed away, and it just seems like the time. But Donald Trump, and this being the party of Trump, and given his age, I think the fight, he loves the political fight, but he understands that he's not winning that political fight in 2024.
What is it, Julia?
I think it's a number of factors, really the perfect storm right now. I think the party is not what it once was. His branch of the party might not be as powerful. You're seeing the rise of, obviously, the very ultra-right conservative House Republicans, figures like J.D. Vance, a rising star within the party, different from Mitch McConnell, but also the age factor. And that comes at a time, you know, when President Biden is getting criticized for his age, some pushback. President Trump, obviously, Dianne Feinstein passing away last year. So I think it was really the perfect storm for Trump.
Why today? He was 82 yesterday. Donald Trump yesterday was just as powerful as he was.
Well, look, he's doing the right thing. He's doing what Joe Biden probably should have done.
So I was about to say there's some Democrats who would like Joe Biden to say that very same thing, or a version of it.
Or that Joe Biden should have done that in 2022 after the midterms were over. But what McConnell is trying to do is give space to his party to have a very difficult conversation that they're going to have, and that'll be shaped by who wins and who loses and how many of what faction. But let me just very, very quickly say, Mitch McConnell is probably, almost certainly, the most consequential lawmaker of my lifetime. He is the most consequential lawmaker that I have covered. He has done more to shape the way that Congress works. It sometimes doesn't work. And he is a master legislative tactician. And we will feel, he and Nancy Pelosi, we didn't know it at the time, but for a period of time in the United States, we had two real titans who were institutionalists trying to hold the Congress together from very different points of view.
So Senate Republicans will eventually have a decision to make on who should be their leader. Some are actually celebrating this decision today within the Republican Party. I spoke about that and more with the Republican senator from the state of Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, just a little while ago. Watch. Senator Johnson, thanks for being back here on the Hill. Appreciate the time, as always. A day that's become a pretty important one here in Washington. I want to direct your attention to a post from Matt Gaetz. I know other chamber, but your side of the aisle. He said today, quote, he said, "We've now 86th McCarthy, McDaniel, McConnell. Better days are ahead for the Republican Party." Is today, with Mitch McConnell stepping down, or at least announcing his intention not to be the leader in the Senate, is today a day to celebrate in your eyes?
I think it gives us an opportunity. I listened to Leader McConnell's speech. I thought it was very gracious, very heartfelt. We appreciate that his health is recovering. I do appreciate that he announced now, so he gave us the opportunity as Republicans in the Senate to develop a mission statement, to lay out goals, so that, first of all, whoever we choose our next leader can embrace that mission statement, lead in a very collaborative way, but also so the American public can see this is what the Republicans in the Senate, this is what we need to do. And I can pretty well describe what I think our one-sentence mission statement needs to be, is we need to effectively counter the radical left ideology, their policies that are destroying this country. That's what we need to do as Republicans here in the Senate.
You know, when you talk about that mission statement, I think about Donald Trump nicknaming Mike Johnson MAGA Mike Johnson. Does the next leader in the Senate need to be a part of the quote-unquote MAGA movement?
No, the next leader needs to have a collaborative process that embraces a mission statement that puts America first, that recognizes things like we need to secure the border before we send $60 billion in aid to Ukraine, that recognizes that a massive deficit spending and debt is also a clear and present danger to this nation, that realizes that this wokeism, the indoctrination of our children, is destroying our country. So we need to focus on the big issues that face our nation, the challenges, but primarily push back and counter the radical leftism that's destroying this country.
You know, I heard you off the top there, Senator, be gracious to Leader McConnell on the day in which he steps aside. But earlier today, you talked about that Big Four meeting that was at the White House yesterday, and you said McConnell prioritizing Ukraine over securing our own border, talking about the other four leaders. You said shame on them, essentially saying shame on Mitch McConnell. Does he represent the Republican Party as you see it, as it stands today? Does he embody the ideals of where the Republican Party is heading?
Well, again, I want to remain gracious. It is true that I was disappointed in that Oval Office meeting that five of America's leaders, only one stood with the American public and demanded what the American people expect, which is to secure our border. That was disappointing to me. But again, I want to remain gracious. Again, I appreciate Mitch McConnell's service. I will say that I think a supreme moment of leadership is when, after the tragedy of Justice Scalia's death, he stood firm. He said, let's let the American people decide what direction the court ought to take. That was a very smart, very wise leadership at that point in time. So let's remain gracious.
Is this the Republican Party today as you see it, or is it essentially the party of Trump? Has this been an acknowledgement, a recognition that Donald Trump is going to be your nominee later this year? You hope he's going to be the next president of the United States. Where is the party right now with Mitch McConnell stepping aside as you see it?
The Republican Party that I joined, again, I was never involved in politics. I still view myself more Tea Party than Republican Party. But the Republican Party I joined was concerned about the fact that we were mortgaging our children's future. That, massive deficits are going to cause all kinds of calamity for Americans. And that's what we've seen under Biden. $1 you held at the start of the Biden administration is only worth 85 cents. A Republican Party that recognizes that you achieve peace through strength, but strength starts with economic strength. Stop mortgaging our children's future. Embrace and utilize our God-given fossil fuels. Don't have a war on fossil fuels and artificially drive up the cost of energy. Have a legal immigration system and a secure border. So those are things that the Republican Party should embrace. That's certainly what I intended when I joined the Republican Party.
Do you have any interest in running for Speaker as we run, or no?
As leader, what I have an interest in is going through a process where you develop that mission statement, those goals, and identifying a leader who will embrace those goals and lead in a collaborative way.
I said Speaker, I meant leader, as you know. We'll leave it there. Senator Ron Johnson, appreciate the time as always and hope you come on back soon.
Have a great day.
Going through a process, Julia. That was a dodge on the answer. Do you want the gig?
A dodge on the answer, but it certainly sounds like someone who is interested or thinking about the gig, and if not the gig, leadership, some sort of leadership position.
And if he could become the focal point for sort of the nationalist MAGA America First crew, right? The Cruz, the Josh Hawley, the J.D. Vance, the whomever, if he could become their Mike Johnson, right? If he could become the vessel for their anti-establishment energy, then he could give John Thune a real fight.
The mission statement, effectively counter the radical left ideology. I asked him, does Mitch McConnell, Tiffany, embody the ideals of the Republican Party? Quote, I want to remain gracious.
Look, I've met Senator Johnson. I really like him. Yeah. And I've been in that hot seat where you're talking to the press and they drop questions on you. I think
those are all fair questions, though.
You're in the hot seat. Wow. All right. Berman's got the hot seat.
I know at the end of the day, he wants what's best for America. And I think he's approaching it the right way. I mean, he genuinely, authentically is standing up and sharing that because he wants a plan. He wants a mission to deliver results for the American people. And that's what we are deeply lacking right now.
That's true. But I can agree with all of that. But in the end, is Donald Trump the right leader for this party with so much baggage with him? And what happens if he doesn't win, or worse, he's incarcerated or convicted? And then where does the party go there?
So
both are going to have to retool.
Yes.
Both parties are going to have to retool.
So that's a good point.
After this.
Because if he wins the presidency, you know where the leadership, or the top Republican in the Senate will be. It will move right. If he doesn't win, then Republicans will have a decision to make. Or if the Dems take over the House and lots of variables still.
Scott has another strategy on that. Dems win. That's the one Scott's got.
Still to come here on the Hill. President Biden, former President Trump easily won their primaries in Michigan last night, but were there some warning signs, especially when you look at years past? Steyerwalt is going to break down what happened in Michigan last night when the Hill on NewsNation returns. So what did we learn last night, and what is raising some alarm bells for really both of the campaigns? Steyerwalt here to break it all down. Chris.
Okay, we can call this the Blake Berman inspired. This is Bermanian.
Okay.
This breakdown is Bermanian because here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at two counties in Michigan. A tale of two counties for Michigan. Look at the beautiful map here. Talk to the hand. Blake, do you know what's in Washtenaw County?
The defending national champion Michigan Wolverines.
Ann Arbor is there. College town, and you see it's close to Detroit, which is right over there by Canada. And then down here on the watch band of Michigan is Kalamazoo County on the other side of Michigan. And do you know what's in Kalamazoo County, Michigan?
Not the University of Michigan?
Definitely not the University of Michigan, but a lot of socially conservative, tend to be socially conservative, very moderate. Kalamazoo, this is on the Battle Creek side, on the Kalamazoo and Battle Creek side. This is the Dutch Reform, squeaky clean, tulips and good living out there in that part of Michigan. So we have two different kinds of counties. And they tell two different stories. So here's what happened in Washtenaw County with the hippies, is Joe Biden got 78% of the vote to 17% for uncommitted. Now, the 17% for uncommitted was among the highest. They tied the highest share of uncommitted votes of any county in the state. Now, the uncommitted votes came from a lot of Arab American and Muslim American voters and a lot of peace protesters, but also, as we said, hippies. The people, and I say that lovingly, the young people in Ann Arbor who said, we got to send you a message, Joe Biden. If you don't drop support for Israel, we're going to drop support for you. So how does that compare to what happened in Ann Arbor and environs in 2012? Okay, Biden didn't do as well as Joe Biden, as Barack Obama did in the similar situation, right? The 7.8 is a smaller number than 17%, but the turnout was enormous. Turnout was enormous, and this is something that should encourage Joe Biden. Yeah, 8,200 or so people came out to vote against him, but 37,474 people compared to fewer than 5,000 for Obama in similar situations. So that tells us a little something. Okay, now what about the wooden shoe crowd? What if we go out to the other side of the state and we talk about what went on in Kalamazoo County? Okay, here's what Donald Trump did. He won, for sure, bigly even. But it was his weakest county. It was among his weakest counties in the state. Why was it among the weakest counties in the state? Because these are Nikki Haley kind of traditional conservative voters, right? These are nice people. These are very nice people. And they like that brand of conservatism. And they're also more affluent. They're more college educated. These are more aspirational kind of church-going kind of people than you see it in a lot of the counties where Donald Trump did really well. And the place where Donald Trump did really well is up the Walter Reuther Expressway into places on the east side of Detroit. A lot of working class places. Okay, how did Trump do compared to predecessors? Look at the magic numbers. Look at all these faces. Little Mako, there he is. Ted Cruz, unbearded. John Kasich's hair, looking amazing. So compare and contrast that. One last thing before we go. I want you to look at these last two boards. Here we go, very quickly. Number one, here are the results from Washtenaw County in 2016. How did it go? It was a blowout, right? But Joe Biden did a lot better than Hillary Clinton. Is this a warning sign that Joe Biden could meet the same fate? Now, last one. Look at Kalamazoo. A similar story to be told here, right? Can Joe Biden get those squeaky clean, nice folks who may disagree with him on a bunch of stuff to go vote against Donald Trump? I guess my takeaway here out of all this, Blake, is turnout is high, baby. People are coming out to vote, and they love to vote for Donald Trump, and they love to vote against Donald Trump. And I keep waiting for the bottom to drop out of turnout in what are essentially uncontested primaries at this point. But the people keep going because the fever pitch remains high, and there's two big forces working at opposite directions in Michigan, and it's going to be close, close, close.
Stirewalt breaks it down. Takeaways?
Look, turnout absolutely high, but I've seen a lot of fodder, I think, from political strategists, operatives about that 13% number, that 13% of uncommitted votes. That should be a major warning sign for President Biden, because it's not just in Michigan. I think it shows that Arab American voters, Muslim American voters, young progressive voters are really ticked off about his handling of the Israel-Hamas war, so he should not take that lightly.
Real quick, last thoughts?
None of those Muslim Arab Democratic voters said they weren't going to vote for Biden. They said they weren't ready to commit to him because they want to send him a message. Okay. He's got 9 months to fix that, and he will.
Tiffany?
Yeah, look, he has a problem consolidating his base, and RFK Jr. is also posing a major problem to him as well.
Maybe Trump.
We'll see.
You know, Republicans got a lot of conspiracy
Biden has a base problem.
He's a conspiracy theorist.
All right, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you all. Still to come here from the Hill, other side of the break. What is the best way to pay off tens of thousands of dollars in student debt? Is it not working 9 to 5? Maybe do you want to pick up that sports gambling app? What is going on? I'm serious.
No.
This is happening, and Leland Vitter will join me to talk about it on the other side of the break.
Bet on Michigan.
The Hill Sunday with Chris Starwalt.
Unvarnished, unapologetic insights from the best journalists in Washington and around the country. That's what we have in NewsNation.
Premieres this Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern on NewsNation.
All right, so before we say goodbye, story that caught our eye. Millennials are turning to sports betting as a way to pay off the cost of college. That is according to the Wall Street Journal. You see the headline there. The TikTok generation turns to sports betting to chip away at student debt. For instance, here's Jamie Reagan, a TikToker, hoped his series could pay off student loans and get him a sponsorship from a sports gambling company. Reagan, though, shelved the idea last year. Watch.
Hi, welcome back to the series where I can't win 2 bets in a row. I try to pay off my student loans by sports betting. So far in the series, we're down $20, but I have a plan. I'm just going to win.
Host of On Balance, Leland Vitter joins me now.
I'm interested as to why you thought I would have some insight into this story.
Yeah, they're laughing in my ear about this. You have no insight? You don't have the DraftKings app on the phone?
I don't, number one. But I always thought that the younger generation was supposed to be smarter than the current one. I loved his idea, though. We're just going to win.